Now, the loan itself is now in focus, okay? You are now on one side of it, you're packing up feverishly, you're settling out your lease if you're renting a place, and now your loan's in process. So what is happening on the loan side? Okay, well, there's four main areas, there's four main quadrants that represent different people in the life of the loan process, okay? The first part is the upfront process, which is the loan officer. A good loan officer is going to ultimately ask you for upfront income documentation. He or she is going to do a very thorough interview. It's going to hopefully feel like a conversation, not an interrogation, but they're going to ask questions. They're going to ask questions about your life, who's going to be on the loan, how many kids you have. They're going to be asking some legitimate questions about how you make your living, and they're trying to figure out two things: your willingness to repay, and then your ability to repay. Ultimately, it's seeing as a preview, what that process is going to be like for you in qualifying you. The loan officer does not decision the loan. The loan officer is not ultimately responsible for the approval of the loan. That does not come until later. But the loan officer is quadrant number one, up front. Okay. After the attorney review and after the loan has been fully submitted, meaning most or all of the documents up front have been taken up, it goes to quadrant two, which is the processor. Okay, and the processor is a loan document specialist. Their jobs is entirely to deal with the documentation. Now, a good loan officer is going to get, all of or most of what they need on the income side up front. And then when it goes to processing, the idea is the processor takes what you've already gotten, you send it to the processor, and then the processor takes a look at the file. If they can, if you missed anything, they'll ask you, the buyer, for anything that the loan officer may have missed and that they know they're going to need. And after the processor thinks that they've got everything that they need to submit to underwriting, they submit to the underwriter, which is quadrant number three. Now, the underwriter is a person who is going to look at you on paper. It's not likely that you'll ever speak to an underwriter. Occasionally, they will call clients directly in certain situations, usually to verify occupancy for where somebody's going to live as their primary residence. But the underwriter is basically, if you can picture somebody, cracking their neck and putting in their earplugs or putting in their earbuds to listen to some sort of soothing music, Enya, Sade, I don't know what you listen to, but they're gonna look at you on paper as a buyer, and they're gonna say, okay, well, tell me about this Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, and what do they look like on paper? And they're gonna look at all of the documents that have been submitted. They're gonna look at what you're attempting to buy. They're going to look at how much you want to borrow as a percentage of that. And they're gonna look at all of the things that we talked about early on: credit, assets, debt, and income. And they're gonna take that approach and look at every single thing. And at the end of it, they're gonna take their earbuds out. It can be, a 2-day process. It can be a 1-week process. It can be a 6-hour process. It can be depending on the complexity of you, the buyer, and their workflow, because during peak seasons, they have more files to underwrite, so they might not get to your file immediately. But at the end of it, they're gonna take out their earbuds and they're gonna say one of a couple things. One option is the best option, which is, yes, we've issued conditional approval, and I'll get to what conditional approval is in a second. Or another option would be, okay, I'm not saying no, but I need to know more about this, or I need to know more about this, or I see that this happened in the credit report, but I need to know more about it. I need to have a little bit more information to feel comfortable that that is no longer an issue. So that's a maybe. You get either a yes conditionally, you get a maybe, and a maybe can turn into a yes conditionally, or it can turn into a no conditionally. That's option 2. And then option 3 is, I don't think this is a good loan to do. And in that case, the no basically will go to an escalation team. In most lending situations, one person isn't beholden to whether or not a file gets denied. You as a buyer have the right to have that double checked during the process, and usually if somebody has denied it, somebody else will take a look at the file independent of the first person to confirm that the denial is for the right reasons. If there's anything that can be done to restructure something that is denying the ability to approve the loan, they'll bring that to you. But that is the underwriting process in a nutshell. We've gone through 3 quadrants. We've gone through the loan officer is quadrant 1, and we've gone to the processor, quadrant 2, and we've gone to the underwriter, quadrant 3, and then quadrant 4 is the closing department. So that is after the conditional approval has been met, and then the final place, those are the closer and the funder, usually the same person, sometimes they're different, is responsible for hitting the send button on the money. That's the simple way to do it. So in the next video, we'll talk about what it means and what your role is going to be in this whole process, and when you pick up with your actions again.